Egypt condemns Israel's decision to halt humanitarian aid and close key relief crossings into Gaza. UN Secretary General Guterres calls for immediate resumption of humanitarian aid to Gaza after Israel halts supplies. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel accepts US plan to extend Gaza ceasefire. It's exactly 10 a.m. car local time and you're watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Egypt has strongly condemned the Israeli government's decision to halt humanitarian aid entry into Gaza and close key relief crossings. In an official statement, the Foreign Ministry denounced the move as a violation of the ceasefire agreement, international humanitarian law, and the Fourth Geneva Convention. Egypt emphasized that the use of starvation and blockade against civilians, especially during the holy month of Ramadan, is both unjustifiable and inhumane. Cairo called on the international community to take immediate responsibility in ending these unlawful measures and to reject political agendas pursued at the expense of innocent lives. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has denounced Israel's decision to halt humanitarian aid to Gaza, calling it blackmail and collective punishment against civilians. In a Foreign Ministry statement, Saudi Arabia condemned Israel's blockade of humanitarian aid, calling it a flagrant violation of international law amid the Palestinian humanitarian crisis. The kingdom urged the international community to end Israeli violations, enforce accountability, and ensure sustained aid delivery. Jordan has condemned Israel's decision to suspend the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza and close the crossings used for this purpose. Jordan also called this move a blatant violation of the ceasefire agreement and the 1949 Fourth Geneva Convention on the protection of civilians during wartime. The Jordanian Foreign Ministry spokesperson emphasized the need for Israel to stop using starvation as a weapon, especially during Ramadan, and urged the international community to enforce the ceasefire and ensure humanitarian aid access. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for the immediate resumption of humanitarian aid to Gaza after Israel announced a halt on goods and supplies to the besieged Gaza Strip. Guterres urged the prompt resumption of aid and the release of all detainees while urging all parties to make necessary efforts to avoid a return to hostilities in Gaza.
Entire communities reduced to rubble, hospitals and schools destroyed. We must spare no effort.
Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati has confirmed that Egypt's Gaza's reconstruction plan is now complete and will be presented at the Emergency Arab Summit on March the 4th. The plan aims to ensure the Palestinians remain on their land while securing international support and funding for its implementation. On the ceasefire negotiations, Abdulati reaffirmed Egypt's ongoing efforts to maintain the truce and push forward with the second phase of talks. He emphasized the importance of safely executing the January ceasefire agreement. Following the Arab Summit, he announced that a ministerial meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in Saudi Arabia will work to secure global recognition of the summit's decisions. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated that Israel accepted a U.S. plan to extend the ceasefire in Gaza by 50 days, but said Hamas has rejected the plan. Netanyahu added Hamas demands for a permanent ceasefire are unacceptable. Hamas has reaffirmed its commitment to the originally agreed upon ceasefire, which was set to transition into a second phase involving negotiations for a permanent end to the conflict. However, it has firmly rejected the proposal for a temporary extension of the 42-day truce. Hamas has announced that it would not agree to extend the first phase of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza as requested by Israel. A senior Hamas leader, Mahmoud Mardawi, has stated that the release of remaining Israeli detainees would only take place under the terms of the already agreed upon interim agreement. The International Committee of the Red Cross has stressed that the ceasefire agreement has saved countless lives and offered a beacon of hope in unimaginable suffering. The committee's head has added any unravailing of the forward momentum created over the last 6 weeks risks plunging people back into despair. She further stressed that every effort must be made to maintain the ceasefire so that the lives are spared from hostilities, humanitarian aid enters the Gaza, and more families are reunited. Palestine has warned that the Israeli authorities are moving forward with plans to annex vast areas of the occupied West Bank under the so-called Greater Jerusalem Project. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry of Affairs and Expatriates denounced Israel's actions as a major crime aimed at annexation, forced displacement and destruction in the West Bank, undermining a Palestinian state. It urged international intervention to hold the plan, warning of its devastating impact on peace efforts, and vowed to pursue the issue globally. Hundreds of Israeli protesters have blocked the road outside the Prime Minister's residence. Netanyahu announced that he would block humanitarian aid from entering Gaza after Hamas rejected Israel's proposal to extend the temporary ceasefire to Ramadan and the Passover period. This decision has warned many Israelis and detainee family members who are worried, who fear the consequences on the detainees remaining in Gaza and on the longevity of the ceasefire. In Damascus, the Syrian presidency has announced the formation of an expert committee tasked with drafting the constitutional declaration that will govern Syria's transitional phase. This decision follows the outcomes of the Syrian National Dialogue Conference and aims to establish the legal framework for the transition. The 7-member committee, including key figures such as Abd al-Hamid al-Awak and Yasser al-Hawish, and others, will present its proposal to interim President Ahmed al-Shara upon completion. And now we move on to the latest developments in the Russia-Ukrainian war. Ukrainian President Zelensky stated that he believed that he could salvage his relationship with the United States President Donald Trump following their explosive Oval Office meeting. However, he emphasized that further discussions would need to take place behind closed doors to address lingering tensions constructively. Zelensky, talking to reporters after a summit with European leaders in London, said he did not think the United States would stop its assistance to Ukraine because, as leaders of the civilized world, they would not want to help Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, Zelensky added that he remained prepared for any challenges that may take place. Zelensky also stated that he remained ready to sign the proposed minerals deal with the United States and that he believed the United States would be ready as well.
The current line of contact as you
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has stated that Europe urgently needs to rearm. She added that the EU member states must be given the fiscal space to carry out a surge in defence spending. She told reporters after a long time of underinvestment, it is now of utmost importance to step up the defence investment for a prolonged period of time.
We need a common European approach, but also the member states need more fiscal space to do a surge.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said European countries are convinced of the need to ramp up defence spending. He hoped a meeting of European Union leaders on March the 6th would be a clear impulse that no one would submit to what he called Russian blackmail and aggression.
Emocji, aby relacje transatlantyckie, europejsko-amerykańskie były jak najsilniejsze. Także na tego 6 marca też patrzymy z taką ostrożną, ale nadzieją, że
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has said that Ukraine would never dance to Russia's tune and that the focus for allies will be to ensure that Kyiv has a strong army. Scholz told journalists Ukraine is a European country that has decided it wants to join the European Union, a democratic and sovereign nation, and that it must remain so. At a summit in London just 2 days after Zelensky clashed with US President Donald Trump and cut short a visit to Washington, world leaders offered a strong show of support to the Ukrainian president and promised to do more to help his nation.
Demokratische und souveräne Nation, dabei muss es bleiben. The basis of everything would be a strong Ukrainian army.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has stressed the need for unity within NATO and the West. Meloni warned against divisions as the alliance navigates the ongoing war in Ukraine. Meloni was in London with other European leaders to help secure peace in Ukraine and stability across the continent. Speaking after the talks, Meloni said broad consensus on maintaining lasting peace, but cautioned that any fragile agreement could be at risk of violation.
Quello che delle volte è accaduto in passato, no? Cioè alla fine l'unica cosa che davvero noi non possiamo permetterci.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said he did not accept that the United States under President Donald Trump was an unreliable ally. Asking during a press conference whether the United States was now as unreliable ally, Starmer said nobody wanted to see what happened last Friday. Starmer added that the United States has been a reliable ally to the UK for many decades and continues to be. Starmer also announced a new £1.6 billion deal which would allow Ukraine to purchase 5,000 air defence missiles using export finance.
And to guarantee the peace. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has reiterated his support for Ukrainian President Zelensky. Trudeau, who was in London to attend the European Leaders Summit, hosted by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss European security and Ukraine, has asked about Trump-Zelensky's meeting and responded that he stands with Zelensky and the people of Ukraine.
We all have important roles to play, and we've recommitted today to continue to do that. And we're going to continue to be there to support Ukraine as necessary with whatever it takes for as long as it takes, because Ukraine is not just defending its own territory, it's defending the very principles.
The Kremlin has reported that French President Emmanuel Macron expressed readiness to engage with Russian President Vladimir Putin, but had not yet taken steps in that direction. The Kremlin also noted that France's recent stance supporting the continuation of the Ukraine conflict. It added that the EU's stance may evolve based on its interactions with the US and the dynamics of Moscow-Washington relations. Macron previously mentioned dialogue with Putin could happen when conditions stabilize. And now we move on to Riham Morsi, our newsroom. Riham.
Thank you, Rana. And now we're going to take a look at the latest when it comes to economic news. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the creation of a U.S. strategic crypto reserve with the aim to position the country as a global leader in cryptocurrency. Trump said in a post on Truth Social that his January executive order on digital assets would create a stockpile of currencies including Bitcoin, Ether, XRP, Solana, and Cardano. More than an hour later, Trump added Bitcoin and Ethereum as other valuable cryptocurrencies will be at the heart of the reserve.
Oh, it did go through. All right, we're done. Perfect. The first transaction by a president.
As a result to President Trump's announcement, Bitcoin has traded up a fifth on Monday from last week's lows. Bitcoin, the world's largest cryptocurrency by market value, was up more than 11% by $94,164. Ether, the second largest cryptocurrency, was up about 13% at $2,516. The total cryptocurrency market has risen about 10%, or more than $300 billion in the hours since Trump's announcement. The U.S. Treasury Department has stated that it would not enforce any anti-money laundering law that obliges millions of businesses entities to disclose the identities of the real beneficial owners. In a statement, the Treasury Department noted that it would not enforce any penalties under the Act against U.S. citizens or domestic reporting companies. The department added that it intended to issue a rule to narrow the scope of the Act of foreign reporting companies. The measure's supporters says it was designed to address the growing popularity of the United States as a venue for criminals to launder illicit funds. Still in the U.S., where the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has said the government spending will be separated from gross domestic product reports. Lutnick's comments came in a response to questions about whether the spending cuts pushed by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency could possibly cause an economic downturn. His remarks echoed Musk's argument that government spending doesn't add economic value. Chinese manufacturers have reported an uptick in orders in February as importers rushed to beat higher U.S. tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. Trump earlier imposed a tariff of 10% on imports from China, and that will rise to 20% beginning Tuesday, March 4th. Surveys of factory managers showed China's official purchasing managers index rose to 51.1. Above the 50 level marks the between contraction and expansion. Iran's economy minister Abu Nasser Hemeti has been impeached after parliament voted to dismiss him amid rising inflation and a falling currency. Hemeti was removed from office after 182 of 273 lawmakers voted against him amid widespread public discontent due to rising cost of living. Over the 8-month period, Iran's currency has lost close to half of its value against the US dollar. The Iranian rial now trades at 927,000 to the US dollar against 595,500 in August of last year. Now we go back to you, Rana, in the studio.
Thank you very much, Reham. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Egypt condemns Israel's decision to halt humanitarian aid and closed key relief crossings into Gaza. UN Secretary General Guterres calls for immediate resumption of humanitarian aid to Gaza after Israel holds supplies. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel accepts US plan to extend Gaza ceasefire. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.